A Humble Soul, back like we never left, you know what I'm saying? Got another one for y'all. This time we taking it to the East Coast, and we're placing a spotlight on Taxstone, one of the trendsetters when it comes to hip-hop podcasts, you know what I'm saying? Tax is currently locked up awaiting trial for murder and gun charges. I want to do a video highlighting Tax's contribution to urban culture, you know what I'm saying? And just also share some information on this current situation. Shout out to everybody tuning in and rocking with A Humble Soul. If you're not already linked in, make sure you hit the subscribe button and all that. Stay locked and loaded, you know what I'm saying? Without further hesitation, let's get into it.
That's the game now, my nigga. Don't do nothing to these niggas out here, my nigga. Believe me, you will be the only nigga outside keeping it real. You're going to find yourself alone. I found myself alone plenty nights in the precinct, son. I'm like, what happened to all the gangsters outside, my nigga? I was in there dolo. And I had to think about this shit recently. I say, yo, my nigga, I went to jail all the time by myself, son, and gangsters sent me. Gangsters.
Taxstone was born Daryl Campbell on August 14th, 1985 in Brooklyn, New York. East New York to be exact. From what I understand, he was a smart kid coming up, but at an early age, he ended up getting caught up in gang life and street activity. Just started dibbling and dabbling with robbing and selling drugs and, you know, playing with guns and all that type of stuff. And this led to Tax spending multiple years in prison. He did a few bids, and he also was shot in his left eye at the age of 22, which left him partially blind. Tax happened to be real cool with Kid Fury from the popular podcast The Read. After noticing the success his friend was obtaining from speaking on a mic every week and doing live shows, you know what I'm saying? Tax began to consider trying his hand at podcasting himself, and that decision ended up changing his life. I heard him appear on The Brilliant Idiots. It was an episode they had in early 2015. It was like right after the New Year. It was like January 7th, 2015 or something like that. The episode was called Head But a Bullet. On this episode with The Brilliant Idiots, Tax talked about everything from being shot to being blocked by Nipsey Hussle for making, you know, jokes about his album. I think it was the Crenshaw album, the album he was selling $100 a pop. And he also talked about being encouraged by Kid Fury to do a podcast. Tax also, you know, touched on why he considered Brooklyn artist Troy Ave to be a fraud and a bully.
Look, so I had to expose him because I'm like, first of all, you're not even tough. If you want to be honest, if you want me to be honest, you're not tough.
Do you see them out?
Out like where?
Just anywhere, in clubs?
Nah, I don't really go out like that. But they be in clubs because they get booked. But he never was in clubs. He wasn't in parties. There's nobody that could find Troy having a picture in a club from back in the days, clubs in Brooklyn, the Elks, Club Rain. He wasn't in those clubs because we was there. He wasn't there. You know what I mean? And he's a fraud. Like, he really is. He's like MC Gusto. And people don't know because they're afraid because he's bullying a whole bunch of white people that fucking came from Green Bay and he just attacked
Green Bay
because he walk around with jerseys and ugly dudes that think they tough and intimidates them. And he ain't doing that to nobody that's tough.
Tax ended up joining the Loudspeakers Network, you know, a company co-founded by the late Comeback Jack and his friend Chris Morrow. This was pretty much Tax's introduction to the world. In March 2015, Tax launched his very own podcast entitled Tax Season, and he pretty much became an undeniable presence. You know, in my opinion, you know, he was a breath of fresh air to both the podcast game and hip-hop culture. Fearless, you know, intelligent, funny, brutally honest. He really didn't hold anything back, you know what I'm saying? Just thinking about Tax Season, there are so many different episodes that were controversial, funny. But one of the more unforgettable ones was when he interviewed, Joe Budden, who's been doing this thing on the podcast end for some years now too. During the conversation they had when Joe stopped by tax season, was pretty memorable to a certain extent. It was pretty much Tax doing the majority of the talking. He asked Joe about everything from his altercation with the Wu-Tang Clan to, talking about the different domestic abuse allegations. The conversation ended up going left. Tax got heated and, Joe walked off the show. Tax's career was put on halt after an unfortunate incident that occurred at the Irving Plaza concert venue in New York City. According to court reports, on May 25th, 2016, Taxstone, Troy Ave, and Troy's friend and bodyguard, Ronald Banger McFadder, were there for T.I.'s concert and ended up just bumping into each other backstage in the green room and got into a confrontation. Tax and Troy reportedly saw each other, exchanged words. They, ended up tussling. And before anybody could break up the fight, multiple gunshots rang out. And in the end, Banger, Troy Ave's bodyguard, was fatally shot once in the chest. And what's crazy about it, man, is Banger had just turned 33 a couple weeks before he lost his life. And Troy Ave was shot twice in the legs, and 2 innocent bystanders were also struck during the incident. Rumors began to circulate about Tax's involvement in the shooting, and law enforcement ended up releasing surveillance footage that showed Troy Ave shooting at Taxstone as he fled the lounge. On the morning of January 16, 2017, Taxstone was arrested at his aunt's home in Brooklyn, and he was later charged by the feds for being a felon in possession of a firearm. Tax's DNA was found on the trigger of the 9mm, used during the shooting at Irving Plaza. Troy Ave and Banger's DNA were also found on the gun, according to reports. In June 2017, Tax pled guilty to the weapons charges. He faces up to 20 years in federal prison when he's sentenced, for those offenses. The following month, after he pled guilty to the gun-related charges, Tax ended up being indicted for Banger's murder. Tax pled not guilty, and he's currently awaiting trial. It's been pushed back a couple times over the last year and a half or so for various reasons. The most recent being COVID-19. That slowed a lot of things up with the court system, not just him, but everybody. The trial is expected to start sooner than later, according to different reports that I've read. If Tax is convicted, he faces up to life in prison. Man, it's an unfortunate situation. I'm not sure what the future holds for Tax, but there's no denying that he's left a void in the game, especially when it comes to hip-hop podcasts. His contributions are something, in my opinion, that will never be duplicated. And salute to everybody tuning in and supporting AHumbleSoul. If y'all messing with the content, man, thank you. And I just ask y'all to subscribe to the channel, follow us on social media, grab some merch, If all the links will be in the description below the video. But once again, man, it's your guy Lewis checking in. Until next time, I'ma holler at y'all 100.